Have you ever noticed that? How some headline from like halfway across the world can suddenly make your crypto portfolio jump or maybe drop,
Oh, absolutely. It's pretty wild how these seemingly distant global things hit home so fast.
especially in crypto, right? It moves so quickly.
Exactly.
So today we're doing an urgent deep dive. We need to look at what's happening now with Bitcoin and also the big altcoins, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, Chainlink.
Yeah, the whole day.
And our info for this comes from a recent YouTube transcript. It's titled Bitcoin, It's Happening Now, Urgent Update. Bitcoin News Today, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, and Chainlink. That's from the Crypto World channel.
Okay.
So our mission really is to pull out the key stuff for you. You know, the market moves, the technical signals, even the geopolitical stuff that's pushing things around, all the things that impact your understanding and maybe spot some opportunities.
Sounds good. A lot to cover.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Mm.
So that initial market reaction to global news. Wow, it can be fast.
It really can. And it just shows how unexpected links can cause these big shifts. We saw it play out just recently, didn't we?
We did.
It's such a clear example of the market just craving predictability, you know?
Mhm.
The White House came out, announced what they called an official ceasefire between Iran and Israel, and almost, instantly, the U.S. stock market, the S&P 500, and Bitcoin both just shot up.
A major rebound.
Huge rebound in the short term. It just tells you even a tiny hint of things calming down, no matter how shaky it might be, can spark this sharp bounce. Investors just jump on any sign of stability.
But, well, it wouldn't be geopolitics if it stayed simple.
Exactly. Never simple.
Because right after that bounce, we started getting all this conflicting info.
Yeah, the narrative got messy fast.
You had Iran's leader saying the Iranian nation is not a nation that surrenders. Then the Israeli military, the IDF, claiming a ceasefire violation and saying they were going to respond forcefully.
Right. Not exactly calming words.
Not at all. And then just to make it even more confusing, former President Trump jumped in, telling Israel publicly not to drop the bombs and saying the ceasefire was still in effect.
So, yeah, total uncertainty from the official side.
Completely uncertain. So given all that noise, what was the market actually doing? Because it seemed to react differently.
That's the key question, isn't it? Because while the leaders were saying one thing, the market seemed to find its own way to read the situation.
Right. It found its own, barometer.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
One of the clearest signals, maybe the best barometer, was the price of oil.
Right. Makes sense.
Think about it. When things were heating up over the last few weeks, what happened to oil?
It surged, went way up.
Right. Because, tensions in the Middle East, they mess with supply chains, potentially. That means higher energy costs, higher production costs everywhere.
Which means more inflation.
Exactly. More inflation, maybe central banks hike rates, and that's just generally bad for markets, stocks, crypto, everything.
Okay, but then recently, with this ceasefire news, even the confusing news, oil prices took a dive, a significant dump.
A big dump, yeah.
So what does that tell us about what the market actually believes? Maybe more than the official statements.
Precisely. Despite all the back and forth from the leaders, the mixed signals, the markets seem to be actively pricing in the idea that the conflict might actually be ending or at least de-escalating significantly.
So they're looking past the words.
Kind of feels like it. They're seeing that drop in oil, coupling it with the initial bounce in stocks and crypto, and reading it as a bullish signal for traditional markets and for crypto. It just shows how markets are always trying to look ahead. They react fast to what they perceive as stability, even if the official picture is still murky.
Okay, so the global politics are setting the stage, but the moment-to-moment action is really on the charts.
Always is.
So let's zoom in. What is Bitcoin's technical picture telling us right now, amid all this uncertainty? Where might prices be heading?
All right, let's dig into the Bitcoin charts. Looking longer term first, say the weekly and the 3-day. That super trend indicator is still green.
Okay, so big picture, still bullish.
Big picture, yeah. It suggests the larger bull market is still technically active. But
There's always a but.
always a but in technicals. What's interesting here, though, is the weekly Bitcoin SED, the moving average convergence divergence.
Yeah, momentum indicator.
That's showing declining bullish momentum. And there's also a pretty major bearish divergence we need to keep an eye on. Plus, on the 3-day chart, the MACD just had a bearish crossover.
Okay, so weakness creeping in.
Suggests weakness, yeah. For the next few weeks, maybe even a couple of months. But, and this is crucial, we're not seeing huge bearish momentum taking over either.
So not a crash signal, just a slowdown.
Exactly. It points more towards like a period of sideways consolidation, maybe a very slight pullback before the main bull trend eventually kicks back in later on.
Okay, so even with those strong long-term signals, the short term looks more cautious because momentum's fading a bit.
That's a good way to put it, cautious.
So what does that mean for the price right now? Like on the daily chart or the 6-hour?
Well, okay, looking closer in, Bitcoin had that nice bounce recently. It came from really close to its 38.2% Fibonacci support level,
Which was round.
right around $98,000. That's a level traders watch closely based on those, mathematical ratios. It's pretty clear that the $97,000 and a $98,000 zone is strong support for now.
And if it breaks that?
If we got a confirmed break below 97K, then yeah, we could see drops towards maybe $93,000. And if that doesn't hold, potentially down to the $87,000, $88,000 area.
Okay, but on the upside, it did break back above a level, right?
It did. It broke back above $103,000. So that level, 103K, could now potentially act as support.
Gotcha.
And we also saw that oversold signal flash on the 6-hour RSI, the relative strength index.
Right, suggesting maybe it was undervalued short term.
Yeah, often that just leads to a quick bullish relief bounce. But it's really important to remember, an oversold signal by itself doesn't usually mean the whole trend is reversing. It's often just a temporary pop.
So where's the immediate hurdle now, the resistance?
Right now, Bitcoin is really struggling with resistance between $106,000 and $107,000. That's the key zone overhead.
And if it breaks through that?
Okay, if we get a confirmed break, daily close maybe, above 107K, then the next levels to watch are $108,500 and $109,000. And then above that, you're looking towards $110,000 plus.
So with these mixed signals, short-term weakness but long-term bullish, and everyone waiting on the Middle East news, what's the most likely path near term?
Given everything, it wouldn't be surprising at all if Bitcoin just kind of settles down for a bit, moves sideways.
Chops around.
Yeah, chops around between that new support, say $103,500 and $104,000, and that resistance up at $107,000. It almost feels like the market's just holding its breath,
Yeah.
waiting for more clarity on the geopolitical front.
Okay, makes sense. Now here's something interesting I saw mentioned, a potential pattern forming.
Ah, yes, the possible inverse head and shoulders.
Right, on the 6-hour chart.
Yeah.
But it's not confirmed yet.
Definitely not confirmed. It's a possibility. This pattern, it looks like, well, an upside-down head and shoulders. It's usually a pretty strong bullish signal, often marks a bottom and a reversal upwards.
So what needs to happen for that pattern to actually play out?
Okay, for this specific potential IHS to form, we typically need to see Bitcoin pull back slightly, maybe to that $103,000 or $104,000 support area we just talked about.
Okay, form the right shoulder.
Exactly. Then it needs to bounce from there and, crucially, get a confirmed breakout above the neckline, which is that resistance area around $106,000, $107,000.
And if it does all that, what's the target?
If that pattern confirms and breaks out, the measured move, the typical bullish price target, could be way up, potentially challenging the all-time high.
Wow, okay. Significant if it plays out.
Very significant. But again, still just a potential pattern right now. It needs confirmation.
What's fascinating here is how this potential pattern lines up with some other market data, right? Like the liquidation maps.
Yeah, exactly. The liquidation heat map, which just shows where lots of leveraged positions might get liquidated, where stop losses are clustered.
Basically where the money is.
Pretty much. It shows a buildup of liquidity just above the current price, specifically around $106,500 to $106,700.
Right, in that resistance zone.
Right where that potential neckline is. So this suggests there's like a magnetic pull upwards for the price to go and take out that liquidity, wipe out those stops and short liquidations.
And that move itself could help form the pattern.
It could potentially help form that right shoulder bounce and push towards the neckline breakout. It's, classic market mechanics. Price often gravitates towards those high liquidity zones.
Okay, so Bitcoin is navigating these choppy waters, potential patterns forming, waiting for news. How are the altcoins doing? Are they just following along or doing their own thing?
Yeah, let's pivot to the alts. As you'd expect, really, they tend to follow Bitcoin's lead, especially during times like this.
Riding the coattails.
Pretty much. Their recent performance really shows that.
Okay, let's start with Ethereum, ETH. What's its chart look like?
So ETH had a nice short-term bounce, too. came off a key Fibonacci support level down at $2,100.
Okay.
And right now, it's trying to get back above $2,400. Now, if ETH can actually hold $2,400 as support,
Then what?
then it could potentially re-enter the range it was stuck in before the drop, which was roughly